Welcome back to She Asked, Tools for Practical Hope, the podcast where we explore healing, creativity, spirituality, and the deeper stories that shape who we become. I'm your host, Anna McBride, therapist, coach, storyteller, and someone who believes that healing is not linear. Sometimes it comes through grief, sometimes through relationships, sometimes through spirituality, and sometimes through art. Through my coaching work, retreats, workshops, and this podcast particularly, I support women navigating major life transitions and reconnecting to themselves in deeper, more authentic, embodied ways. If you're looking for deeper support in your own healing journey, you can learn more about all that I offer at annamcbride.com. Today's conversation feels incredibly special because we're going to be exploring the intersection of artistry, spirituality, identity, ritual, and the human body itself. Today, I'm joined by Gia Rose, artist, tattoo artist, and a creator of deeply intentional tattoo experiences that often feel as emotional and transformative as they do aesthetic. Gia, welcome to She Asked. As always on this show, we like to begin with a story. Gia, please take us back to the beginning. What first drew you to art, tattooing, and eventually creating tattoo experiences that feel so intuitive, spiritual, and emotionally intentional?
Okay. So, yeah, 23 years of tattooing is what I've been doing. And back when I started, it really was still very counterculture and taboo, not something people really pursued. I'd never heard of it. I fell into it. I was right place, right time. And the woman that taught me was a woman, was a very spiritual and intentional tattooer. And so I kind of had that integration very early on in my apprenticeship, and tattooing is an apprenticeship based trade, unlike a lot of other arts. It's very unique. It's a whole thing of its
Mm.
own stuff. And she had this other aspect to it that I learned under. And then when I left her umbrella after a year, I was thrown into the world of tattooing and industry and realized very quickly how rare that was. I
Mm.
never really come full circle back around to it until more recently within my work, which has evolved naturally over the course of my career, geared more towards what I like to call intuitive tattooing, where was an offshoot of creating my own style and spending a lot of time honing that. And then the type of clients that would come to me just evolved in this way, where the way I work is they give me ideas, stories,
Mhm.
memories, things that are important to them. The majority of people I tattoo are women, and a lot of archetypal imagery. And then I go with it for the aesthetic and the illustration and the tattoo aspect of it. So someone can give me a lot of feelings or
Mhm.
vibe or an archetype or a moment in their life. And then I come up with the imagery that represents everything that they need, but it's not a literal translation. So it's a lot more metaphorical, intuitive, from everything from the palettes to the actual imagery to the designs to the size to the placement. And that's something that we kind of collaborate with on for that tattoo. And it's a pretty powerful way to move throughout the world.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, your story is so amazing because often we will fall into opportunities and not know where it's going to take us.
No,
And
I had
it,
no idea.
yeah, and here you are 23 years later,
Oh,
intuitively guided, creating the
I've been
expressions.
and I've been very lucky in my career. I've been right time, right place, in the right moments as tattooing has evolved. I've been able to
Mm.
create my own pigments for one of the biggest color companies in the world for tattooers.
Wow.
And I've been able to make stamp sets for other artists through Procreate, and I've been able to teach and big stages and small stages and do shows and It's just all picking up the doors that were open for me and just seeing where everything went.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible. To me, that sounds like alignment. You're in
Yes.
alignment with what you're meant to be doing. So incredible.
I hope
So,
so.
what was your relationship with art growing up?
To be, I actually hated it. I never wanted to be an artist.
Okay.
And I think it's because my parents really pushed me to. I'm in the middle of 5 children, and I was raised by, I like to call intellectual hippies. And they really pushed my artistic and creativity in that way. And we were, as children, we all have our own thing. And they kind of pushed us each in our own directions. And I don't say pushed as more as fostered. Every birthday or holiday, my gifts were always art supplies. Never asked for them. Was always encouraged to be an artist, go to art school, look at art school. Because I did. I painted and I drew and I kept journals and things like that when I was younger. But I was also very counterculture as a teenager and part of the punk scene growing up in the 90s. And it was very encouraged by my family, but I was always rejected. I rejected it. I was like, no, I'm not going to be an artist. That's dumb.
Mm,
Who wants to be an artist? I'm going to be an artist. That was actually my thought process was no. And I really wanted to pursue a trade skill. Tattooing never even entered my mind because it just wasn't something people sought after or looked at all. I liked the idea of trades because I wanted something that only I could do. I didn't want to compete. I didn't want to climb a ladder. I didn't want to,
mm,
and especially in art, it's so narrow, but I wanted something where I could work with my hands and I could take anywhere. What I do, what I make is what I produce. What I produce is what I make. I really wanted that hands-on feeling, that
okay.
like sculpting.
Yeah. What I'm hearing is a real drive to want to be your own person, right?
Yeah, take it
And
anywhere.
have your own expression. Let it be authentically yours, right?
I didn't like being like put in a box or pinned down. And a lot
Yeah.
of the world felt like that. And so when I fell into tattooing, I didn't know it was both. It's a trade aspect because it's a skilled trade, a highly skilled trade. And then art comes in secondary to it. You have to first learn how to put in a functional tattoo, which is like building a table, right? It
Right.
has to be functional, it has to be clean, it has to be clearly readable, it has to heal well, it has to maintain its status as a readable, legible, good tattoo. And you're working in living tissue. So there's mild medical aspects. And then the client, you're one-on-one with clients, so it's very much a skill first, and then if you're lucky enough, then you get to start to be artistic because essentially your client's coming to you for what they want, and that evolution to from what they want as a literal thing like a purple flower on my wrist this size
Yeah.
to the embodiment of the smell of violets that reminds me of my grandmother.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. So you said you resisted art. You fell into tattooing. How does one fall into tattooing?
I was a punk kid. I rode freight trains for a few years. That's a whole other story. I ended up in Asheville, North Carolina, and I was living in punk community. And I was staying in a house, punk house, and there was a girl over, and I think she had a crush on my roommate. I just, at the time, she just randomly started talking to me. We didn't know each other very well. And I was just drawing. I think I was just sitting there drawing. And she just randomly mentioned tattooing. And it's because I had a tattoo on my hand that was not done well. It was done by a man who went by C Note with a homemade machine in a park when I was 15 because I made great choices. Somehow we got on the topic. Somehow she mentioned that she knew a tattooer, this woman in town who was looking for an apprentice, which was really rare. And
Wow.
it just kind of happened. She was like, go see her, tell her I sent you. And I was like, okay. And then I was just interested in like I get
Wow.
where that would go. I didn't really know what it was about. So I went and met her and I brought a couple of drawings, but I had no idea. Like she would tell me later she had no interest in my drawings. She wanted to meet me as a person. And that's my partner, and she took me on, and I learned everything from
Wow.
at that time period in tattooing, everything was really made by hand. So now we have things pre-made, and it's the progression and evolution of our technology has made leaps and bounds in just 2 decades. But at that time, we still made our own needles, we made our own pigments, you built and handled your own machines, all of it. That was the
Wow.
trade. So
Yeah, it's so fascinating to me because I have all my arms. You can't enjoy them all from this camera angle, but I have at least, and also on my legs, over 25 tattoos now.
yeah.
And I don't think I've ever fully appreciated all the work it takes or the evolution as you described it to be able to achieve what we get to enjoy when we get a tattoo.
There's a lot of history and a lot of experiment. It's not higher education. It's really birthed from trial and error and a lot of
Mm.
secrecy, which is why it was very taboo. A lot of secrecy. Even when I came into it, you had to learn how to tune machines and put machines together, and you could, unless you really got into machinery and geometry and you wanted to be a machine builder, you would have to know someone who built machines to buy from, who was
Right.
within the industry, who vetted you and verified you. You
Wow.
can just buy something online, and then
Wow.
you learn how to make your machines and all that, and then you can buy the components, and then putting them all together is very specific, so that it's not just one machine for everything. You would sometimes have 10. And then
Yeah.
the art needle making itself, every configuration was handmade, and that those were secrets to those, and how tattooers would utilize certain needle configurations in order to get certain looks,
Oh,
putting pigment into to skin in an artistic way that upheld well. All of those things, those micro aspects go behind the tattoo art, and that's just the tip of the iceberg of the skill. That has nothing to do with the designs, the art. It's a
right.
lot.
My mind is blown just on how technical it really is.
So we
And
have
then
companies now who make pigment, but it was experiments. A lot of artists in the 70s and 80s that would just, make their own pigments and experiment with you know, their own boiling down pigments and tattooing themselves and hoping they didn't have a bad reaction.
oh my gosh, wow.
There's a
Um
lot.
yeah, there is a lot. There is a lot. Now, you talk about how you were in this one scene. You described it as punk. I know of it. And then you fall to or go or were invited to go work with this art tattoo artist as an apprentice. Was there something within you that was changing going from where you were to what you were becoming?
Yeah, I've always been a very curious individual. And as a
Mm,
young woman, because I was 21 at the time, that was really like the beginning of being a student, and a student with intention. Even if I didn't quite realize at the time, I think it had something to do with the age, your age. And the intention is because it's a lot of work. You
yeah.
don't get paid, and you're doing a lot of labor to learn a skill because it's hands on. You can't read it in a book, you can't find it online. You can only learn from your teacher, so that there's that mentor, apprentice education that is very much hands on and looking towards somebody else to teach you the way of something, which
Yeah.
requires your attendance, your attention. And that comes naturally with intention because it's a lot.
It
And
sounds
so
like a lot. Yeah.
it is. And on the flip side, now that I'm 23 years into my career and I've had a handful of apprentices for in my career, I've learned also the other side of it of being a mentor, which is taking on an apprentice is almost like taking on a child for a little while. And there's a lot of responsibility to it. It is not for the faint. And
Yeah.
it's why a lot of artists don't take them on. And even in cultures where you see tattooing is deep in their cultural heritage, which there are a lot, and we can get into that, you see them almost dying out now, because taking those on either doesn't translate or the traditions start to die out a little bit. There's something very deeply human about tattooing. Like I always say, it's not owned by any culture, it's owned by
Right.
all humanity. We know historically tattooing is prehistoric. Cultures can own their techniques and their imagery and their stories, absolutely. Tattooing itself has sprung up independently amongst hundreds of cultures around the world, and a lot that don't even exist anymore. And it's still continued throughout human history. We've seen evidence of it spontaneously without any other interactions. So it's
Oh,
a very human thing.
okay. Yeah. And you mentioned that your teacher was spiritual. You describe her as spiritual, and you've evolved to be more authentically intuitive, which I see both,
Yeah.
meaning like they mean similar, same, they're just different expressions of the same thing, I believe. I know that you were an intentional student, and there's a lot of time you were giving a lot of investment to your future self. And
Unknown. Yeah.
unknown, whatever that was going to become. Did you find yourself, was this a healing process? Was this a just a creative outlet? Tell me more about what you were experiencing on the inside as you were going through your apprenticeship.
Okay, so this is definitely looking back. At the time, it's very hard when you're in those positions to recognize the wisdom of scrubbing a floor. Uh, you know what I mean? And it really is almost later in life when we really look back at these things and recognize the lessons that were folded within everything that you did and these one-on-one things, because they really are there. And really what it was teaching me something to have throughout my life forever. That as long as I could tattoo, I was always going to have something that was only mine as far as my own security. It was a sense of security that mm, I don't think I'd ever thought I could ever have. You know what I
Okay.
mean? That
Yeah.
that no matter what, if I'm not well, or if I'm in this place or that place, or this happens in my life, or like life, at the end of the day, I still have my ability to create and to tattoo. And it's a livelihood as well as a very satisfying passion. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's a very rare thing to have together.
I agree with you. I think a lot of people, I think you found your purpose through expression that's both where art meets the skill that is a lifelong thing. And you're right. When you're going through the process of learning, it's hard to understand intuitively the lessons and the wisdom that comes from that. But
Oh, yeah. And there's a
yeah,
maturing in that too, because when you're younger, you don't see those things. You don't
right.
understand it yet. And she used to say this thing to me where she was like, watch, don't ask, because if I tell you, you won't understand it yet.
Mhm.
Once you put it into practice, you'll understand what
Okay.
why you're watching, like what you're seeing me do. And then you put it's like the, what is it, see one, do one, teach one. So which is the method of watching, then putting into practice, then teaching it to really hammer it home. And that kind of thing is really about that skill. But there's a lot of lessons that come from something like that within tattooing. And she specifically did ceremonial and sacred tattooing, which was her own thing that she had created from her own, like her own experiences. And she was still tough as nails and like very, that tattooing has always walked the boundaries of taboo and a little bit like crosses every boundary. And that's something that I think is very deeply spiritual within all of tattooing, which is that tattooers work and on all walks of life. So it's not like being an artist within a suspended environment that's created and with you and your work, right? And it's
Mhm.
not like being a student in school where it's you and a bunch of students learning like a task or work within like art school. Throughout your entire career, after you leave your apprenticeships, you are working with your clients and you're working in living tissue. So it consistently changes. It's never the same. Every tattoo requires micro adjustments in order to suit that individual person, their skin, their age,
Right.
their health overall, their well being as a living thing, and then them as a person for their
Mhm.
art and their constitution and their jobs and their, everything. And so every client is different and unique, and over the course of a career, you work with every walk of life, every type of person. And so it's the ultimate service industry for a lengthy period of time. You're sitting and talking with someone sometimes for hours. I have clients I've worked on for 10 plus years. huge projects, you really get to know them. And some sessions are quiet and some are very talkative, and you see them go through the cycles of their life. They see you go through the cycle of your life.
Yeah.
It's
Wow.
on.
Yeah, it's on. It's on. And one thing that fascinates me about the process of tattooing and really your process is it sounds like it's ritualistic as well as something beyond just getting a tattoo, right? It's very intentional. And you mentioned there are clients that you have that you've worked on for years on projects and you've really gotten to know them and very ceremonially. And so therefore it's sacred. And so do you see now that tattooing is a bit like spiritual work?
I think so. I think whether, so there's this saying that not every tattoo has to have a meaning, and that's very true. It doesn't. A lot of tattooing can be purely decorative. A lot of tattooing can be fun or funny or have no meaning at all. I think there was a quote by someone, I can't remember who, so I can't credit them, but they said, I have a tattoo of a stem of broccoli wearing a party hat, and it's because I like broccoli and I like to party. It still has meaning, but it doesn't have to have a deep meaning. But
Yeah,
it's both and. So at the same time, what I see specifically for the type of people who kind of come to me, what I would say mostly come to me is that they do come with a story, with something that has meaning, or they want to represent, whether it's a
yeah,
personal story through their life or a transition they're going through their life, or again, we get into that archetypal kind of thing, the
right.
stories that help us carry that through our lives. And so I think it's built into it regardless. And many tattooers can digress from it or agree, disagree, it doesn't really matter. Even just the act of what we do, like how we set up, is the same every single time. There's a ritual to the way that we approach a tattoo just on its very base level, in the sense of repetitive, so that it's always setting the stage, creating the space, letting the client in, and then getting to work.
Mm,
Maintaining that bedside manner with your client throughout the entire process, their comfortability, because it's a painful process, the
right.
healing process. And then
Yes.
you kind of end that. And then you can take it the step further, which is within your art, which is what I do, and more intentionally with my clients, which is what I do. Not with every client. Some clients are very stoic and very, I just want this. All right, cool. See you later. But they're still coming to me for my work, but that comes from the length of my career. But a
Right.
lot of my clients do give me I really want this representation of whatever it is, a XYZ throughout my life. And I do get things that are very much, I want
Mhm.
something to represent my grandmother, and she reminded me of violets, like I said before. She loved
Yeah.
birds. She loved to bake.
Yeah.
And she was the mother figure in my life. So then my job as an illustrator, an artist, and tattooer is to figure out, how do I put that into an image without taking it literally? Because I don't want to put a pie. I could, but that's not how it works. So, I might pick something that's representative. So I do a lot of metaphorical
Okay.
imagery, so that someone still has a really beautiful looking tattoo. That's not that there's anything wrong at all with realism. It's just not my thing. I like more interpretation. So
Okay.
I think one time I've tattooed a few elements as personification, like from the periodic table of elements. Like, how do you
Yeah.
personify the element rhodium? Rhodium. And we did. So it's those kinds of things is more,
That's
yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. This really rings to me the idea of the body can tell a story, right? And
Yes.
that tattoos and the artistry of tattoos,
Yeah.
the imagery, the metaphors are expressions of one's life story or can be, whether it's whimsical or that they like to party and they like broccoli, anything like that is true. I know that's what my tattoos represent. I have one arm dedicated to all the adventures I've had in my life, and I have another arm dedicated to all the spiritual things I've pursued in family and where everything intersects for me. So God, it has me thinking, I know bodies carry stories, and I'm a storyteller myself. So I really appreciate that sometimes, as I mentioned earlier on, that It could be about grief, it can be about shame, identity, trauma,
Oh yeah.
transformation, and tattoos can come a part of that narrative.
Yep.
Um,
They
so
they definitely can be or
yeah,
are really.
yeah. So what have you learned about people through the way they choose to mark their bodies?
I think ultimately every story is unique. Every artist and every client, and even the same client with multiple tattoos can have
Mhm.
different incarnations throughout the journey of their life. I've noticed that age changes a lot as we get older, that what we get tattooed changes. As with our evolution, what we do, we tend to get more serious about the things that are serious for us, even if that seriousness is having fun. You know
Mm,
what I mean? Whatever it is, we put more into it. And I guess ultimately the common thread is always it's a sense of reclamation, whether it's conscious or not, because at the end of the day, we're here for a finite amount of time. And when we
right.
do pass on, the only thing that goes with us past that moment of leaving this world is our skin. It's the only thing that goes with us. And I've been there
Wow.
in my own moment as a cancer survivor where, I've faced my own death in an emergency situation post treatment where I was bleeding internally. And you don't expect to be admitted into a hospital, and then you are, and you're
Right.
alone because it's last minute and it's 3 a.m. and I'm standing there
Wow.
and I'm wearing nothing but this hospital gown and these horrible hospital socks. And I'm thinking to myself as my blood pressure is dropping and dropping, and I'm about to go into emergency surgery, all I have is my skin.
Mm,
And I remember looking, and I could see every story that I had marked throughout my whole life up
yeah.
until that point. And it made me feel like me.
Wow.
It's when everything
Wow.
else is stripped away from you in
Yeah.
those moments. That's who I am.
Oh, gee, I
It's
love that
and it's
story,
just
even
and
though it
it's
was hard.
just and it's just for me. It's not
Right.
for anybody else.
That's
And I
right.
think in this
Yeah.
world we get bits of ourselves taken over
I
time.
I agree with you. I think, in fact, for me, my journey with tattoos was about
Mhm.
reclaiming my own identity. I
It
was
usually is, even if people aren't really aware of it, it's reclaiming
yeah,
something.
yeah.
Whether it's a history, whether even if it's like go back to the grandmother story, because it's one of a bigger piece that I did that was a lot of what her this woman wanted to have a voice for her
Mm,
grandmother because her grandmother had never had a voice in
right.
her life, and she saw
Wow.
and knew how much she put into her mother and her children and so on and so forth, and so hers was a sense of honoring and reclaiming that for her
Wow.
for her own journey. And so you do it these ways that it's like I see a lot of women embodying warrior spirits or the archetype of that through mythology, or even those of contrition, or
Mm,
all different cultures, whether it's a small piece or a huge back piece. So things that are decorative, I see a lot of animals the representation of what a raven or versus a coyote versus a wolf or those kinds of energies. And it's a lot of people I feel who have not necessarily they don't but see it's both and you can have strong cultural ties or you can have no cultural ties and still be seeking the same thing.
that's why tattoos are universal, right? It's a
Yeah, it's why it's
universal
human. It's a
it's
very
so human.
I think they
Mm,
say it's very rare that there's anything academic written about tattooing. And there's one book that came out recently, only one. I think it's the only academic research driven book ever. It's called Ancient Ink. And they talk about how it's one of the oldest human forms of expression next to jewelry.
wow. Wow. I love that. I absolutely because it does feel like that's what I'm doing. I am anointing, I am expressing, and I'm decorating, which is what jewelry is, decorating the
Well,
body.
it is expression ultimately, which is
Yeah.
something that we hold as human beings in high
Mhm.
regard in the most part, I believe, is the right to express yourself. And it's a
Yeah.
bond. I've seen people cross party lines, all
Yeah.
races, class, gender, age,
Yeah.
ability, disability, all of it to shake hands with others that share tattoos because it's a joiner.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. It's a true connector. I find that's something I'm always drawn to is when I see someone that I pass by that I wouldn't normally generally have a conversation with. If they have a tattoo or they see my tattoos, it brings us together. Yeah. It's a
and it is
great
a very
conversation starter.
and it is a very powerful outward message.
Yeah.
And there are people who have them invisible in the sense that they're always coverable, and that's the
Mm.
private way of being. And then, and a lot of them hold high positions and are high powered in the world, quote unquote. And I know because
Mhm.
I tattoo them. I wouldn't know unless they showed you. And then
Right.
there's others that are they have them, their hands, their fingers, their face, like everywhere on their body. And it's very powerful outwardly freeing. They have no qualms of hiding who they are. And that's very
Right.
powerful, driven by a lot of things too.
Yeah.
And each story is valuable. There's not one better than another, but it is a
Agreed.
very powerful personal
Wow.
experience.
Incredible. A thing comes to mind when I think about someone who does this work that you're doing. I think a lot of people romanticize what an artist's life is like without understanding the emotional reality of being a creative person.
It's
Um,
exhausting.
I'm sure it is. So, actually living like an artist, do you ever navigate? I want to explore some of this about some of the things that you might navigate that people wouldn't know, right? As an
Mhm.
artist, as a tattoo artist, as somebody who is getting to know their clients, understanding and then interpreting and putting together their work and then putting it on them. Do you ever have moments of self-doubt or
Oh, yes and no.
okay.
It's a strange thing. Oh man, I think they're the three words. It's confidence, dexterity, and intuition.
Oh,
So the confidence comes from not ego, but a place of confidence. Having a sense of confidence is something that is instilled in the tattoo community and culture, really, so it used to be very early on. And I think a lot of it was because the industry is very insular, and there was a hard line crossing that line into a tattoo studio. A lot of it is so shrouded in secrecy in itself and mystery in itself that tattooers in their studios would always kind of hold the line of, if you want a tattoo, you abide by the rules. That's it. Bye. There, and that is a sense of confidence because we're professionals and we're going to
okay.
hold that within what we're doing. And it's meant to create a space for the best. This is where the skill comes in, the best result of what we can do. And there's a mixed or misunderstanding in art in general crossing into tattooing where people, and I see this a lot more today, think that they can dictate or create these things that they think are real, but they're not actually tattooable. We see this a lot with AI art, a lot of Pinterest art, things like that. And like we understand like how pigment moves in the skin. There's these things about tattooing where we do things a certain way. And that requires a lot of confidence because you have to, it's not, I don't know how to describe it. It's not an a la carte kind of thing.
I think
So,
you need to know not what will work on somebody's skin,
right.
whether it's achievable, and that
So
from your experience.
and every tattooer has different styles and different skills and different techniques. And there's this kind of mystery, or I guess it's not mystery, but this misconception that all tattooers can do everything, and that's not true. People will spend the true tattoo masters actually, and I do blame reality TV for this misconception because that's just a game. But the reality is that true tattooers who are very good at their craft spend decades honing that skill to be very good at a very specific thing. It takes a lot of practice. And so we encourage people to go to artists that they like their work because they're going to be masters at that type of what they do. And then the dexterity comes into the flexibility that you are working with in collaboration, your client. They're without our clients, we don't tattoo. So
Yeah.
it's like we need our people to put tattoos on.
Yeah.
So within that confidence comes the dexterity or the ability to be flexible and to collaborate with your client to the extent that you as an artist can or do. Because every artist has their method. Every black and gray artists are going to work different than color artists, which are, and then there's the traditional that are different, that hyper realism versus miniature, micro. It's all very different. So you have to have that dexterity, and then also, then we come to intuition. And that intuitive nature comes from experience and wisdom of reading clients when they come in. What are they not saying? What
Right.
are they saying? What are they withholding? A lot of it is reading and body language and allowing space. So, a lot of tattooing does, in my opinion and in my experience, is holding space for people and then making sure to read their body language and read them in a way. Because sometimes you get people who they're nervous and they might be agreeing to a placement that I can tell their body language is saying they're not exactly happy with it. So I'll just give the encouraging prompts. Your stencils can be moved a million times. It's no problem. So why don't you sit with it alone and I'll step away. And however if you want to see it in a different place, it is no problem. Because once we start tattooing, then we can't move it. And then reminding people that way is, and then you'll hear, just giving someone that prompt gives them sometimes that permission to be like, actually, yes, I would like to. And you're like, okay, yeah, I thought I felt that. That's good. So we don't rush it. So that, but that also comes from a lot of experience, and that experience comes from mistakes. So you're going to go through processes of, what the hell am I doing? What the hell did I just do? What the fuck? And that was something my mentor in my apprenticeship in the first year told me. Is she said, when you fuck up a tattoo, excuse me language, you better hope that comes walking back in the door, because that is your greatest teacher.
Okay. Wow. That's a great
And
lesson.
it's nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
Because then she was like, she told me this and it always stuck with me. She was like, great tattooers, every tattooer makes a mistake. What you're doing is handmade. And you're working in living tissue and on people who are going to jump and fidget or not sit well, or you're not going to get that right angle, or maybe you're not feeling that great that day. She's like, great tattooers hide all their mistakes and you'd never be able to tell.
Wow. Wow. I'm thinking about is it's too easy from this understanding to think they're incredible beings, these tattoo artists, right? So what we don't see is the sacrifice. There's a sacrifice that's going on here, I think, in the life of the tattoo artist, right? To speak a little bit about that, about what sacrifices come with choosing this kind of unconventional life.
So when we charge what we charge, for instance, we calculate not just the costs, what we pay for studios, because we're all independent, essentially. We're all independent contractors, we're independent. But a lot of it is everything that goes in behind the scenes. So like all of your art, all of the sketches, all of the research. When you have a very fast progressed tattooer, that's usually honed over time. And that's because they have their method and their skill down really well. And that takes years to master. But there's a lot that goes in behind it. Everyone has their own methods, but it is a 24/7 job. So it's like when I'm done working for the day, I go home and I start to pull together all the research that I may have done at a certain point in time for my next client. And I either finish or start to create the hours of that evening for the appointment in the morning, wake up in the morning, have my coffee, do my morning routine, and then I start to prepare or finish or adjust their drawing for them for the day, just for them to look at it and tell me whether they even like it. And then we have time set aside for them to change that in person. And so it is a very long process, and it takes a lot of energy and skill to put in behind that. And that's all rolled into what we like, how we price, what we charge, those kinds of things. But it takes a lot of time away. There's a lot of drawing, a lot of research, a lot of sketching, a lot of all of that. But that's being self-employed. and then today you throw on top of it content, visibility,
getting the message out there.
Getting the message out there. And I'm glad I'm part of that scene. I'm glad I came up in the era that I did, which was more organic.
Again, this is just really, I'm thinking about people can romanticize everything, right? Particularly given today's opportunities for real life TV, right? Where we
Yeah.
even have shows dedicated to following tattoo artistry. I find what I haven't followed those shows, but I wonder if they really do capture the real.
I think I don't think they do, and I think they're missing
Okay.
out on an opportunity there because
Mhm.
there's a lot of things that go. There's a lot of work and mistakes and just like messes that happen behind the scenes that we all pull together at the last minute to like it's always like that. 23
Mhm.
years in, there still isn't a tattoo that I'm like, okay, do I do this or do I do that? Should I do this? Okay, I did do that. You know what I mean? Like, and
Mhm.
that's just the nature of working in something living. You know what
Right,
I mean? Like, it doesn't matter like how many times I've done a tattoo. If my skin that I'm working on is changing every single time I'm doing it, there's going to be these micro changes, and you're going to hit it like nail on the head so many times, and then sometimes you're not. You know what I
right,
mean? You might be
right.
tattooing someone with health issues or age issues or a collagen issue, whatever it may be, where you're like, oh, got to problem solve this, got to problem solve that. And that's
Yeah.
all stuff that's happening in our heads as we're working.
Wow. And
We're
and
not
so what I
telling you
think
these things.
so then here's a question as someone who I just finished leading a retreat where I was holding space for a number of women that were attending. And I've done this many times. However, every single time I'm still learning how to appreciate the effect it has on me. Because
Mhm.
for you to be intuitive, I know there is vulnerability involved. And
Yes.
I too, engage a lot intuitively with anyone I'm working with. So that's what I'm thinking about is that there's a cost that is yours as someone who chooses this life. And so I find it interesting, like that's the side that we don't see, right? The
No,
human effect that it
no.
takes to be this masterful at your skill and with your artwork. Yet it's
Yeah, you don't really clock in or out. And then
no,
there's the
no, you don't.
aftercare. And then there's the
Yeah,
aftercare aspect. And then there's also someone like me, and a lot of tattooers do this, like tattooers of a certain nature where we're more nomadic. So we do a lot of traveling. I
right.
fly to these areas to spend 7 days in a row with people in a specific city or country. And that in itself is a whole other thing that like
Right.
nomad tattooing with the way we do it. And it's like you're dealing with flight cancellations, hotel problems, like all of that,
Yeah.
the exhaustion of
Yeah.
time zones. But the reward, the
Mm,
why is not just a beautiful piece of work to put on a
okay.
portfolio because I get those regardless, but did I get a good picture? Not always. So I'm never going to
Okay.
post it. And that's just because I'm not great. I'm not a photographer. And
Okay.
I don't have one following me around. And I'm not as concerned about that. I'm more concerned about my client. A client I had recently, and we did her whole lower arm as a sleeve, and she had kept her upper arm open because she had a scar that she wasn't sure if at one day a surgeon needed to go in and replace a rod, and she didn't want it to ruin her tattoo. So it was like, okay. And then I said, just so you know, if you ever want to do a piece up there, we can cover the scar. And surgeons are pretty good at either lining up your tattoo right away really well or moving things around as much as they can. And then we can always go back in and cover that up. It's there.
Mhm.
And in my experience, I've tattooed surgeons and I've had surgery. Surgeons tend to like it. They think it's challenging and fun to see how they can line things up. So she
Mhm.
took a journey and then came to me and she was like, you know what, let's do it. Let's just put something there. And we did. And as soon as we tattooed over that scar, she teared up and you could tell she got really emotional. And she was like,
Mhm.
I didn't even know how much I hated looking at that for that part of
Okay.
my
Wow.
life. She was like, I was
Yeah.
not expecting to feel the way I feel right now, which is full, like complete. Like I
Right.
and
Back together, more wholeness was
right.
afforded to
And that's
right.
just recently, but there's many of those throughout my
Yeah.
career where
I
you
think
see the impact almost immediately in the
mm,
shift of someone's stance of their confidence,
I love
their
that.
healing feeling okay, a
Yeah.
release, even
Right.
a processing of grief. Sometimes it's happiness, sometimes it's sadness, but it's something moving, something
Yeah.
clicking, and you get to witness
It's like
that.
you're helping them move energy
Yeah.
along, I
And
think. Yeah.
I'm not comparing it to anything like doctors or surgeons. That is we are not that.
Well,
You
but I
love
think that when we talk about women and their bodies, this is a really
Mhm.
hot topic for me because in culture, we're constantly telling women what their body should look like, right? And tattooing feels almost like it's the opposite of that, right? The
Oh
act of
yes.
sovereignty.
Mhm.
And so what are your thoughts about you mentioned this client and how she was feeling more put together, more whole, more complete, or return to herself? How would you describe this self expression or reclamation?
I guess it's ultimate agency, really. The choice to be able to do anything to change our appearance, whether it's decorative or not, whether it's temporary, from jewelry or hairstyles, to the ultimate, which is more permanent, like tattooing or even cosmetic procedures. It's all a form of self expression and agency. So to me, and that has very deep meanings to people in a way because it's how you are to the world. And we as women know that ultimately it's how we are to ourselves, right? We don't do things for other people in those senses, right? We can, but that's also a choice for ourselves. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Ultimately, it's agency.
Yeah, I really do agree with you. I think like when we take our the body, the skin, and we express it through art, through tattoo art, especially, I think it's definitely a way where we say, "This is my body. This
Yes.
is
And it's
yes."
interesting. It is interesting because there is a new movement now with younger generations on social media. I've noticed where there's a lot of this like you should and shouldn't for women. It's newer, and one of it is it's the whole misconception, like really awful language that says like a high value individual or a high value woman wouldn't have tattoos, and it's all a lie. You know, any of
Right.
us over a certain age of experience just gonna,
Yeah,
all right, go fuck off with that shit. We all know you're lying because we all age. We all are going to get older, and at the end of the day,
totally.
none of it matters. If we're lucky, that's a lucky
Right.
thing. It's a
That's
gift.
right.
It's
That's
a
right.
gift, and
And
it's
to
a
your
blessing.
you said our skin is what goes with us. And I
It's
think like when you talk about agency, sovereignty, or when I think about it, I think like I want to be able to express as much as I can here.
yep,
It's authentically my way. And
yep.
then I'll take it with me.
Yep, we can't
And
think anything else. It's a famous quote by someone, and it's older in the I don't know the exact time period, but it's mid 20th century
Mhm.
sometime. And it was a news article and it talks about tattooing. And it was like, the art of tattooing is unique in the sense that it is the one form of art that cannot be possessed nor handed down by any other. And it
Mm,
can't be. It also goes with you. It's not just that you take it with you, it goes with you. It's gone.
right. It's yeah.
It's only here. What you have is here for your existence, and then it's gone. And that's a beautiful thing too.
Yeah.
And I love
Yeah,
that.
it brings I love that too, because it also makes me think about impermanence. Because
Yes.
even though the a lot of people, at least some of my listeners who have gotten to know me are saying, "How can you choose something that's so permanent?" And I laugh because I understand it's really not, right? It is very finite in time, and yet I think that if we don't make the most expression of who we are
Yeah.
now, what are we
It's
waiting for?
exactly. And it's very yin yang because it's the permanent impermanence.
Yeah,
It's permanently for you through your time here, and then it's completely gone. It's not
right.
leaving a mark behind you in
Yeah,
any harmful way or any
right.
positive way. It might impact the way people, have
Yeah,
discussions or conversations or ideas. But other than that, as an object or a thing, has a
yeah,
final time that's tied with you because it's within your skin. And it's interesting to me too, as I get older, my clientele also ages with me more. And I see more and more women getting huge pieces. That's
Mm,
another thing too, as they've gotten older. I see more and more women in their 40s, 50s, and even 60s getting huge pieces, back pieces, sleeves, leg sleeves, because they're just like, you know what? It's something I've always wanted and I have. And,
yeah,
the X, Y, and Z has happened throughout my life. And it's
right.
time for me to just do this for me.
I'm telling you, when I got my first tattoo at the age of 40,
Mhm.
62 now, and from 40 to 62, I've gotten over 25. I mean,
Yeah.
it's also very contagious in terms of the expression. Once you get started, it's
Yeah, it's
exciting.
like I was going to ask you, like, how does it make you feel?
More
Yeah.
alive and expressive. And it's the moment I gave myself permission to do it instead of living to people please, which is what had held me back, right? And being put in a box that was socially acceptable.
Yeah.
I was free. I was the beginning of freedom, and
Yeah.
I
It
want to keep
opens.
going.
Yeah, and it opens an interesting door. It's like when you cross that threshold and you're giving yourself that permission of that
Right,
permanence, which you realize is a fallacy once you do
right,
it. You're like,
right.
okay, you're
Yeah,
letting go of a lot of those beliefs that we will
exactly.
carry throughout our lives, what it is to be a woman and throughout the stages of her life. You know what I mean? You're defined by these moments of young girl to adolescence and then young woman. And then if you choose it or not choose it, motherhood. And then to past that, and then it's like these moments of identity that shift and change and throughout our
Yes.
lives. And I notice, at least for me, it's not until I hit my 40s where even though I'm living in this counterculture and working within this counterculture, I still had to have the same revelation myself of that permission to get even more free, even though I've been
Yeah.
lucky enough to live in a very freeing
That's interesting to
existence.
hear that coming from you. And yet,
Mhm.
I think we're a show that has a tagline that says tools for practical hope. And I think for a listener that's out there who is at that stage in her life where she realizes that she hasn't given herself these freedoms, right? These ways of expressing, what's something that you might recommend that might start them on the road to more self expression?
The first thing that comes to mind is to find female designers, like fashion designers, interior designers, artists, sculptors, because these are women who, especially older in life, like they really do embody that life. From Frida Kahlo to Michelle Lamy, which not a lot of people would know about, probably, who's like one of the wildest muses I've ever seen. Talk about freedom.
So finding a muse is what I hear you saying.
Either that, yeah, or like an inspiration or a guide, or
Inspiration.
you can even
Okay.
start with Pinterest mood boards. You know what I
Okay.
mean? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
hitting the things that you find beautiful or creative, or what does that mean? Even asking yourself the question,
Right.
what is it to be free?
Okay. What does it?
Really?
Yeah. And then also beauty. You mentioned that. This is one of the final questions I want to ask you. We've had such a provocative conversation here. I've enjoyed it. Is what has tattooing taught you about beauty? What does it
Um,
mean to be that someone's beautiful?
it truly is the eye of the holder. It's
Mm,
so unique, and I find so many things aesthetically pleasing that many people might not, and vice versa. It's beauty is definitely about confidence. It has nothing to do with appearance. It's all
okay.
energy, right? We can decorate until the cows come home, but it's about how we feel. So, and that's what that really is, and that comes from, and that's why we do what we do, and that's why you don't knock what other people. I don't knock what other people do to make themselves feel beautiful, because they embody that. You can see it in
Yeah.
the way they walk, the way they talk, the way they carry themselves.
Yeah.
Even if they're not there, and everyone's a journey, and it changes and it evolves. It's never entirely the same. And
Mm,
but I think reclaiming that beauty, creating that beauty, holding that, however that is to you as an individual woman, is unique to you, and that's the point,
right.
right? Because
Right.
I think And men too. Men will have it too. A lot of men, because my industry is very much full of men as well. And they decorate themselves up and down, and it might be a different energy for them sometimes, but not always. It's still the same, and it really comes down to self confidence. It's like turning
I love
that
that.
thing that we project out, right?
Okay.
That meter we project out and turning it
Yeah.
around, and looking at it and being like, what is it that I need to see to feel to be authentically me?
Yeah, I love that. I love
And
that.
only
So
we
as
can
we,
answer them.
yeah, you're right. You're right. Now, as we wind down this conversation, how can our listeners that are going to be very excited once they watch this, listen to you, s- start following you or learning more about your work as a tattoo artist? How can they
Um,
find you?
my socials are all the same. It's at Gia Rose Tattoo. And my website is on my socials. I'm mostly on Instagram. I do have across socials a lot, but that's mostly where I'm at because I do tend to and then I do you can sign up for a mailing list if you're interested in knowing where I'm going to be. If you would like a tattoo by me or even have a conversation with me, consulting is always free. And I do tend to post a mix of my life as well as my work. I've always been that because I want people to see, I want people to like me as a person or like what I do as well as what I do.
Okay.
Because I tend to only do very large works, tattoo work or bigger work. And so it's like, we're going to spend some time together. You should probably know a little bit about me.
Right. Oh, I have loved learning to get to know about you through this conversation. This has really been very exploratory, expanding, and so expressive. And I'm so glad that we could finally make it happen.
I know it's a lot of life. Again, I'm in that nomad tattooing journey right now. So,
It's okay. It's okay. It all worked out. It all worked out. So thank you so much for joining us today. If this conversation resonated with you, please share it with someone who may need it. And if you're navigating your own season of healing, reinvention, creativity, self discovery, and are looking for deeper support, you can learn more about my coaching programs, retreats, and workshops at annamcbride.com. You've been listening to She Asked Tools for Practical Hope. Till next time, trust what's coming to you, what is asking you to be expressed in your life. And until soon, be well.